Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, et bienvenue à la comité de finances et de développement économique pour la ville d'Ottawa pour le 4 mai. Welcome to FEDCO, Finance and Economic Development Committee for the City of Ottawa for the 4th of May, 2021. Do we have quorum, Madam Coordinator?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. A reminder for today's meeting, which is being held using Zoom. Members of committee and staff, please stay on mute at all times unless called upon to speak. Members of council, if you wish to speak to an item, please use the raised hand feature located on the bottom of the participants list in Zoom, *9 for members on the phone. This meeting will be live streamed on YouTube. Members and staff are asked to position their cameras so that their faces are centered and as close to the top of the frame as possible. Phone-in participants, please do not put the phone on hold. So before we proceed, I'll do a quick roll call of all members. Conseiller Cloutier.
Présent, Monsieur le Maire.
Councillor Derouz.
Here, Mr. Mayor.
I can barely.
I'm here.
Yeah, we're just having a little bit of trouble. Let me just check the, here we go. See if that works. Okay. Councillor El-Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Harder.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Luloff.
Je suis présent.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Suds.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Vice Chair Dudas.
Ici.
A declaration of interest, déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. See none. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès-verbaux pour le 6 avril et le 23 avril. Carried. I'll now go through the consent agenda. We have one very significant item that we'll come back to, obviously, on the Ottawa Hospital. And the only other item is the Conservation Authority's 2021 levies. Does anyone have any questions on the levies? Sally McIntyre, the GM of Mississippi Valley, will be available to answer any questions if people do.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say thank you to the treasurer and working behind the scene with both Conservation Authority, Rideau Valley and Mississippi Valley, and moving forward with this. I just want to say thank you to all the participants.
That's great. Thank you. So, Councillor Derouz, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that I'm the chair of the South Nation Conservation Authority, and I know our staff has been working very close with our finance department. And for the CAs, they deliver an amazing program in our community and the work they do to protect our watershed. So I can't be more thankful throughout this COVID, the way that they conducted business, and the cities keep going and moving and growing. And there is so much application moving, and they were able to adapt and deliver the services that we want them to do for the city and for the surrounding municipality. So I just want to say thank you for all of them.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Derouz, and thank you for chairing that particular Conservation Authority. And to our other members of council, we have representatives in all three conservation authorities. So thank you all for your contributions. I know it's extra workload on top of everything else you're asked to do, but it's important work, so appreciate it. On the report is presented. Carrie?
Okay.
Our main topic today is the Ottawa Hospital's new civic campus development, a transformational healthcare city building project. I'd like to offer a few comments, and then we're going to ask, we have Catherine Cotton, the chair of the Board of Governors, with us, Cameron Love, President and CEO, and Jason Emery Groen, Vice President and Design Director, HDR, their consultant on this project. I want to offer a few opening comments about the significance of what we're about to be briefed on. With today's presentation, we're embarking on one of Ottawa's most important and significant journeys in our city's history. 3 incredible city building projects will all be launched and completed within one generation. Just to recap those 3 major projects, the City of Ottawa Library and Library and Archives Canada, new main branch. This project not only is a unique partnership between the federal government and the city government and the library board, but it's also going to be net carbon zero. And it really is the project that for once and for all kickstarts the real revitalization of LeBreton Flats. The next city building project, of course, is LRT Phase 2 and Phase 3. Phase 2 is underway, bringing the train service farther east to Trim Road, farther west to Moody Drive and Algonquin College, and farther south to Riverside South, as well as the airport and the EY Center. And of course, Phase 3, which is going to be just as exciting when it brings train tracks all the way to Barrhaven, Canada, and Stittsville. And finally, the third major project of significance that we're going to talk about today is the Ottawa Hospital's new Civic Campus project. Together, these projects will invest well over $10 billion into the local economy and create literally tens of thousands of jobs during construction and afterwards. And all three of these projects are being done while we deal with a pandemic that we've never witnessed in our lives before. So these three massive projects, in addition to record investments in affordable housing, cycling, and all of the other vital services we provide, from policing to roads to water distribution, tell you how active and busy our staff, our partners, and our council has been this term of council. So we begin to write the next chapter in our city's history with a project that will transform healthcare as we know it. So it's my pleasure to ask the Ottawa Hospital to conduct their presentation for us, and for members of the public who will have really the first chance to see the exciting new building that will, as I said, be built and occupied within a generation. So I guess we're handing it over to, I'm not sure if Catherine is going to speak first or if Cameron will.
I am actually going to speak first, Mayor Watson. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And good morning, everyone. And my name is Catherine Cotton, and I'm the chair of the Ottawa Hospital's Board of Governors. Thank you for having the Ottawa Hospital here today. I want to begin today's presentation by thanking our entire community for their support for our frontline workers who've provided such compassionate care to our loved ones during the pandemic period. Your support for the work they're doing during this difficult time is very much appreciated, and we're all grateful for the work that they've done and the work that they continue to do. Turning to the presentation today, on behalf of the Board of Governors and the hospital, we also want to express our sincere gratitude to our partners here at the city and Ottawa Public Health at our regional hospitals for their tremendous support of the Civic Development Project. We feel privileged to work with you in making this groundbreaking healthcare project a reality for our communities here in Ottawa, in Eastern Ontario and Western Quebec, as well as Nunavut. Without a doubt, this project is a major undertaking and will be a milestone for the City of Ottawa. When it opens in 2028, the new Civic will be a world-class healthcare facility unlike any other facility in Ontario that is outside of Toronto. It will be the largest acute care center for adults in our region. It will be home to an advanced trauma center and will house one of the most innovative neuromuscular research programs in the world. The medical care, teaching, and innovative research that will take place here will be life-changing for many generations to come. More than anything, though, the new Civic will continue to be the place where patients and their families will always find the kind of world-class care and exceptional service and compassion that we all want for our loved ones. We truly see this hospital as the future of healthcare, as well as a phenomenal city building initiative, as Mayor Watson said. We're very grateful for the support that you've shown us, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you on this bold new project. And with that context in mind, I'll now turn it over to our CEO, Cameron Love.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here this morning. And I wanted to start by thanking Mayor Watson, this committee, the councillors, and the city staff for inviting us here this morning to walk you through this extremely exciting project, but also to thank everyone for the support that we've had since the start of this project, particularly over the last year or two, as we've really worked through the planning process in the middle of a pandemic. And the whole city team has been absolutely tremendous in terms of helping to inform and guide this process for us as we've worked through it. So I wanted to start with a little bit of a reflection from the last year. And next slide, please. So when we started this project, the first stages of planning, probably 5 or 6 years ago, core to what we looked at from an organization is how do we create a platform that's truly going to transform healthcare? And it really focused around how we create integrated healthcare models, collaboration across this system with all our healthcare partners, both in hospitals and in community. How were we going to create a platform that was really going to innovate and advance care built on what we've done over the last 20 years? And how do we really focus around a population health or wellness strategy? And while none of us really wanted to work through the last year in the middle of a pandemic, there have been a few silver linings. And I think one of the silver linings through the pandemic is how as a community, we have really come together and really rallied to manage through this pandemic as a system. And I think it's core to what the Ottawa Hospital is representing going forward is how do we transform this healthcare as a system and really make it a world-class hospital, but also a world-class system. And so when I look at the work that Dr. Etches and Tony DeMonte have led with the city, what we've done with our healthcare partners, we have had tremendous success as a community managing through the pandemic, which is really a platform for what we're looking to do in terms of transforming healthcare through this development over the course of the next 5 to 7 years. Next slide, please. So when you think about major cities across North America, and if we take Canada and you take, let's say, Toronto or Montreal or BC, if you go down into the States and you look at Philly or Boston or New York, California, one of the pieces to every major great city is a great healthcare system. And I think in Ottawa, we have a great city, but we also have a very, very good healthcare system. But what this development will allow is the evolution into this being not only a world-class hospital, but a world-class healthcare system and a pillar within this community fabric. And when you think about the Ottawa Hospital, I think what's important in terms of the context is this is one major piece within a larger strategy of how we plan on rebuilding healthcare over the next 10 to 20 years. And if you think about the Ottawa Hospital, we do about 70% of all adult care for this region. And this region spans from Barry's Bay to Hawkesbury to Cornwall. And other than major burns and lung transplant, every other aspect of care is provided for within this community. And on top of the 70%, 100% of all complex care. So whether that's neurosurgery or vascular surgery or trauma, those types of diseases and illnesses that either have significant risk of mortality and morbidity, generally 100% of that is managed through the Ottawa Hospital for the entire region. And so over the course of the last 10 years, we've moved in this journey of building towards an integrated health system where we have the Civic and the General, which are 2 principal sites with 1,200 beds. We have 19 sites now across the region. So whether it's cancer or nephrology or mental health, we've really moved towards trying to create an integrated health region. Having said that, we also are a very large employer. We have about 17,000 staff and physicians that work in the organization, and in partnership with with the various universities and colleges, we train about 2,800 students and learners every year. The Major Trauma Center is a huge focal point for us in terms of being a world-class city. It'd be great to think that we won't have another disaster over the course of the next 10, 20, 50 years. But I think the reality is we've had things like ice storms and bush crashes, the shooting on the Hill. We've had very significant crises, and we're probably going to have more in the future. And the catch is how do we continue to prepare ourselves to be able to effectively manage those to support the community? And then I think the other key piece to this, which I will talk a little bit more about in a second, is around our research and teaching, which is really core to what the Ottawa Hospital does, but it's core to a strong city in terms of how we advance healthcare for the members of this community and how we keep and train people internal to Ottawa that allows us to advance that care. Next slide, please. So that gives you some context just on the Ottawa Hospital. But the focus today is around the new civic development. And over the course of the last, we started this project a number of years ago and had a vision around the new civic. And thankfully, over the course of the last 2-3 years, we've made tremendous progress in terms of moving this project forward. And we're now into a very much an implementation state. And so as you recall, about 2 years ago, we put out the first concept drawings, which was really at the stage 1 of planning. And over the last 2 years, we've done a significant amount of work based on some community consultation, a lot of work with ministry, the City of Ottawa, NCC, to create the next iteration of this design and move into the third phase of our planning. Where we're sitting today is this project is a $2.8 billion project, and the first phase of this is 2.5 million square feet. And the reason I comment on the first phase is the new civic is really the catalyst in terms of our whole healthcare transformation agenda for this region, but it's built on multiple phases. So the first phase will build, in essence, and we're going to show you these drawings today and walk you through this, we'll build the platform for the entire new civic. But predicated on that and post that, we have a second phase, which over time will include moving the Heart Institute. We've got plans in terms of expanding our cancer programs at the general campus. There is significant research expansion. We're looking at it for the general in terms of cancer and stem cell research. We've got a plan in terms of creating post-acute care on the existing civic campus after the new campus is built. But this whole transformation of what we're looking to do to advance care and create this integrated system is really built on the new civic, which is the starting point. And I think the important thing with the new civic, which is really critical, is that it is probably the center that will deal with the most complex care in this region. It is the only trauma center, so anybody that has had a life-altering injury or illness is coming to the civic campus, and we serve everywhere across this region. But I think it's important to realize we also serve Western Quebec for complex care such as advanced neurosurgical treatment. We'll take people from all across this country, and we're also the principal referral center for all of Nunavut. So any patients that are up in Nunavut that require any type of complex care, they're either coming to the civic campus or the general campus. And it's a relationship we've had for a number of years, and is very much core to what we do in terms of supporting that community as well. The other thing I think is really important to note, and I want to build on what Mayor Watson has said, is when you think about this city and this community and the opportunity to transform healthcare, this is an opportunity like none other. And there's not many communities over the course of the last decade anyways, if not 2 decades, have had the opportunity to build a world-class new academic center. There's been new hospitals built across the country and across Ontario, but none that will have the order of magnitude of impact this center will provide for this community, both from a clinical, a research, and an education perspective. But I think equally important to my comment that healthcare is a pillar to any great community or great city. This is really a historical city building project and will be a landmark for the city for probably the next century. Next slide, please. So in terms of the new civic, and I'll just touch briefly on each of these, we've spent a lot of time over the course of the last couple of years in terms of what it means to build a world-class facility. We've done research all across the globe in terms of what many nations, many countries, many cities have done in terms of building new centers. And we've learned a tremendous amount over the last year through this pandemic in terms of how we have to evolve this design further. And I think point 1 is probably the most important from the point of view of the pandemic. We've always had a very strong infection control program and team. We've managed infections very, very well, whether it's been through SARS or Ebola or C. diff or MRSA, and now the pandemic. But I think unlike any other, what we've learned this year of managing the pandemic has changed some of our thinking and design in terms of what we build into the future of the new center, as well as what we'll do in renovating the rest of our infrastructure over time. Digital technology is also a given, but what we've seen today and what we will build for tomorrow, the evolution of this is incredible. So we have an Epic platform now, which is our clinical information system. It runs across 8 different hospitals in this region. It will by the end of this year. So we're working towards one integrated digital platform. But this site, when we talk about what we're looking at from an artificial intelligence perspective, robotics, and digital infrastructure, it will be probably the most advanced digital platform of any hospital that's been built as we open by 2028. And I think it's something that when we open in 2028, part of this is creating that flexibility on how we expand both the digital platform and the infrastructure, because it continues to evolve. Healthcare evolves at a tremendously rapid pace. And part of this plan is how do we create that flexibility? The accessibility side is also a great opportunity. It is, when we look at some of the between our patients, our families, and our staff that work here, having an environment that works on the highest standards of accessibility to support those that have various disabilities is absolutely a key principle to what we've worked on from day one. And we'll continue to engage with those various community groups in terms of how we create an accessible environment. And it's not just about what the opportunity we have building at the Civic, it's how we're planning to invest and change some of the other platforms we have at the Civic and the Rivers, or the General and the Riverside, and our other campuses. And so this is a great opportunity to really create a world-class facility, but with the higher standards of accessibility. Natural light and holistic sustainability are also two major components. Natural light, if you do look at all research, is a given in terms of its impact on healing and wellness and its impact on morale within staff. And so if you look at any new hospital built across the globe, natural light is core to the design of how you build a new hospital. It will be for this one as well. And as well, the holistic sustainability, to Mayor Watson's point around carbon neutrality and how we manage this from an environmental stewardship perspective is a key component to what we've been planning for the last 5 years and will be as we finish off the designs over the next 2. And then the last comment I wanted to make is I think we're extremely fortunate as a community. If you look at major trauma centers across this world and major urban centers, there are not many that have the opportunity like we have to build this on a platform of the green space that exists. And when you think about hospitals and you think about wellness, the whole concept of green space and the environmental opportunity of linking between the farm, the Arboretum, and Dow's Lake, it's an opportunity like none other that will really separate us from many other world-class facilities definitely across Canada, probably within North America, and if not the globe. Next slide, please. So the other real component to this work that we've done is we have a very diverse and inclusive community. And it is, it is a fantastic, I've been in this community now for almost 25 years, and having been working with the hospital for the last 23 of them, it is something that is a huge portion to our consultation process. And so as we talk about engaging with diverse and multicultural communities and really having that engagement, it helps us with the design and how we prepare both our programs operationally and our physical infrastructure to support the populations within the community. And it is something that we've been working on for the last year and a half, and it's something that will be part of the next consultation phase. And it creates an environment that the community can be 100% behind and supportive of. And it also allows us to take into consideration those various design aspects that represent the cultural diversity and inclusiveness into the entire plan. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Jason to walk you through the designs, and then I'll come back at the end and talk a little bit around timelines. But we did want to talk about these 7 dimensions at a summary level. And I think from the work we've done, both with the city, the NCC, and the community, there are really 7 dimensions that have been core to what we've looked at as we look at this, not only as a world-class healthcare center, but as a real landmark within our city infrastructure for the future. The first one is around economic growth and diversification. So from the plans that we have, this will create north of 20,000 jobs, just from the development side of this. On top of that, though, with our research platform, the opportunity of what we've done in the last 10 years and what will evolve over the next 10 in terms of expanding our mandates around research and innovation in partnership with various private sector organizations that are helping us to advance care is a significant economic growth opportunity in terms of that research platform. Integrated transportation, I think to the Mayor Watson's point around LRT being a major building block to the foundation of this city, it has been a key component for hospitals. And I think the one thing that differentiates hospitals and basically any other industry is the impact of the modes of transportation. So we have people that walk, we have people that bike, they take cabs, they take cars, they take motorcycles, ambulance, fire, police, and helicopters. All of those are modes of transportation that have to be built into our thinking on how we bring people to and from the campus. But light rail is a huge opportunity based on the way it's integrated into this campus to maximize the use of it as a transportation platform for the future. And so as we've worked very closely with the city team, who has been just tremendous in terms of advice and direction on what's happening with mass transit and light rail, and it's incorporated right into the fabric of what we're doing for this campus in terms of the transportation planning. Thriving communities is really one that speaks to how we've managed during the pandemic, post-pandemic, and how we prepare ourselves as the only trauma center for the region for disasters in the future. And a big core to what we've looked at is taking a look at trauma centers across the world in terms of the infrastructure they create, the programs they create, the models in terms of how we manage through this. And as I said before, while I hope it's not going to happen, I don't think it'll be another 100 years before we see another major pandemic of sorts. We've had SARS, we've had Ebola, now we have COVID. We've learned a tremendous amount. This infrastructure will prepare us, put us in a significantly better state, having a civic of this caliber of infrastructure to manage future pandemics and disasters for the future. And while none of us want them to occur, the reality is the preparedness around them is critical to allow this community to thrive in the future. Environmental stewardship is the fourth dimension, and I think it is an absolute given based on the direction that we are looking at from carbon neutrality. That is very much core to what we will plan to do as part of this civic development. It's also what we do as part of this and how we build this into our other campus infrastructure, but obviously the civic is the core component to this, as it's a brand new greenfield site that gives us an opportunity to build this. So in line with what the net zero goal is that Minister McKenna has with the federal government, this is very much part of our planning in terms of how we move to a carbon zero, carbon neutral footprint, particularly when we talk about our central utility plants, what we're doing with food services, and how do we create that platform in environmental stewardship. Service excellence through innovation. This is really focused around our research and innovation platform. Core to what we will always do is focus on quality of care and providing world-class compassionate care. That has been our mantra for the last decade. It will be our mantra for at least the next, the foreseeable future. Having said that, the opportunity around what we're doing with research and innovation to advance that care is a significant opportunity with new infrastructure. And we've had a huge amount of interest from various healthcare companies that are looking at partnering with us in terms of how we advance healthcare. And as we advance healthcare, it puts us on the cutting edge of what we do clinically, which helps us from a health population perspective for this community, and allows us to become a beacon of success, both within Canada and in some cases internationally, like we've done for things such as MS research. And so it propels us forward in terms of our place within a healthcare industry as being a world leader. Sustainable infrastructure, this one is very key. I think one of the big challenges with healthcare over the last, or healthcare or hospital infrastructure, is its ability to keep up with change. The pace of change over the next 10 years, there's a number of experts that outline that what's happening from a digital platform, innovation, and research perspective, how we'll evolve over the next 10 years will dwarf what's happened over the last 50. And so our ability to create infrastructure that allows that flexibility and room to grow to support those changes that allows us to advance care in this community is absolutely critical to the success of this organization and this community for the future. And then the last dimension, which gets built into our designs, is around a thriving workforce. The reality is any hospital, the heart of any hospital is the workforce. And we've seen that in spades through the pandemic in terms of how our healthcare practitioners, nurses, physicians, support staff, how they've rallied tremendously to allow us to support what needs to be done through the pandemic. Having said that, our partnerships with our universities, U of O, Carleton, Algonquin, and L'Estatier, are critical in terms of how we promote health and wellness within our education programs and how we grow our education programs to recruit and retain people to this community so we can continue to advance healthcare. So those 7 dimensions and what I've outlined have guided us through the last, sorry, I just have to take this off the screen. Have guided us over the last 2 years as we've worked through these stages of planning. And what we'll do now is I'm going to turn it over to Jason Emery, who's going to take the context that I've set and walk you through the designs that have been planned as part of this stage.
Excellent. Thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Catherine, and of course, Mayor Watson. And as the title suggests, and Mayor Watson mentioned at the beginning of the hour, the team is very excited to explore how to develop a transformational healthcare city building project on this amazing site. This morning, we'd like to take you through an outline of what some of those transformational elements could be. Transformational in the opportunity to stitch together all levels of government, from the gifting of the land.
I think we've lost volume.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Jason?
think.
Jason, I think, is Jason still there? Just checking with our committee coordinator. Yeah, he's frozen. So Jason, I don't know if you can hear us, but you might want to re-log on. Cameron, are you able to bring us through some of the slides if we can't get Jason back?
If we can't get Jason back, I think I probably can. I just have to, he's actually got control of the slides. So we'll just text him and see where he's at, Mayor Watson.
Okay, so we'll just take a few moments recess, and we'll see if we can get him back quickly. Yeah, I believe the YouTube streaming has frozen as well. So we'll just take a 5-minute recess. And oh, there's Jason. He's back. That was a quick 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone.
Sorry.
I apologize for that.
Let me just confirm that we're back on YouTube. Just give us a moment, please, Jason.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jason, looks like we're back on. We'll head it back to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, it never fails. You got to keep on your toes, I guess. So as I was mentioning, not only are we touching on 3 levels of government, but we also have the potential to leverage all 3 pillars of sustainability and resiliency. The green bubble on the screen, the environment, a brownfield site here surrounded by a rich natural environment with incredible opportunity to redefine healthcare as an integrated element into the natural realm. The blue, the economy, a site at the corner of one of the largest city transformations already underway with the densification of the Preston-Carling district. And as Cam described, an opportunity to leverage and grow the region's economic engine through research, education, and healthcare innovation. And of course, the orange bubble, social, an opportunity to promote equity and to give back to the citizens of the region, not just by the provision of healthcare, but to create a complement of amenities that open the site to the city in a proactive way. So the site, the blue dot here on the screen, central to the city and its continued densification, as well as proximal to the 417 and key access points, is an incredible location. A place where the master site plan guiding principles tie to the promotion of wellness and recreation, stitching and extending a fabric of walkways, bike paths, green spaces, and parkways. The integration of healthcare into the landscape, not as a hermetically sealed off space, but as more of a porous and inviting environment. And no doubt this would be hard to relate to, or at least it was at the beginning of the pandemic, but an appreciation for the importance of outdoor space is clearly growing now more than ever. And we see this as so valuable to the future of spaces for healthcare. And finally, a guiding principle that seeks to invite the community in and activate new found spaces for all in our city. So we thought we'd take you on a little journey this morning and through a high-level, three-dimensional sketch of the art of the possible on the site. Some of our early explorations set into the context of some of the major residential towers underway to the north of the site. So as we glide here over Dow's Lake, you'll see the pavilion on the left, Commissioners Park just under us to the right. And you can start to see the landscape fold up and over and through, extending opportunities for public amenity overlooking Dow's Lake and the Dominion Arboretum to the left. The potential for a new innovation hub that Cam will speak to shortly at the corner of Preston and Carling, an activated street front along Carling that includes extensions of the multi-use path, the potential to maintain the existing LRT station location at the north of Carling, while connecting to an LRT platform to the south with research, innovation, and partners facing Carling, and a green and park-like approach to the main hospital through the escarpment of mature trees you can see here extend onward through to the Dominion Arboretum to the south, a continuing green belt through the site. Here you see the preservation of the Dominion Observatory and the historic lands at the northwest corner of the site. The integration of the hospital as seen through the thick tree cover of the farm, from the mid-century research buildings such as the Neatby building along Carling to the genetics building here in the foreground of the associated buildings. As we glide around and over toward the William Saunders building, we aspire to maintain view sheds back to the observatory lands to the north. And patient and building services are intended to fold into the landscape, discrete and out of view from the ground plane of the farm, as well as the Prince of Wales Drive. So as you see here over the Dominion Arboretum, you'll appear shortly here to the right, the folding and that continuation of the public space of the Arboretum, Commissioners Park, up and over and through some of the new infrastructure required for the site, creating an entirely new experience for citizens to come and enjoy year-round. So how have we come about these explorations on the site? Well, of course, first and foremost, the site has a very particular and specific boundary, as you can see here on the screen. And there are many things on the site that influence the decisions, such as a retaining wall and a significant grade change along Carling that in some ways might preclude access, but in other ways offer interesting opportunities, such as this 10-meter or 30-foot drop and level change along the escarpment where the mature trees are on the site. There's also elements that are less easy to see, like Mooney's Bay sanitary sewer easement infrastructure that we would not intend to build on. And other elements like the light rail transit line that bisect the lower portion of the site. So we looked at various configurations over the last number of years and realized that positioning the hospital on the largest portion of open land allowed for the most optimal clinical configuration, with a key requirement to allow for future expansion. We then looked at the least impact to the farm in terms of traffic, and we realized that positioning the ambulances and emergency vehicles to the west allowed for clear segregation of flows where seconds count. Along with multiple sustainable options we're exploring, we're also looking at physically dropping the central utility plant into the grade at the west of the hospital to eliminate it from view and to maintain vital proximity and adjacency to life-saving equipment in the hospital. In reviewing the urban truck routes in the city and major flows of goods serving the hospital, we realized that we could focus deliveries away from the central experimental farm and segregate them away from the public access, and most importantly, the emergency access to the site. We could even do this by setting the loading docks at grade and in line with a total materials management floor that would be able to feed into the entire hospital in an incredibly efficient manner. Ultimately, locating the loading area along the southeast offers a discrete building services realm beyond the tree cover along Prince of Wales Drive. When we first met with the public during the stage 1 submission to the Ministry of Health, the idea of a protected public realm as part of the project became an area of focus of some very exciting feedback. And as we've continued to explore ideas for the hospital, we've begun to tie this to policy in the Preston-Carling Secondary District Plan to form an urban plaza at the bottom of the escarpment along Carling, as well as to develop a key ordering element to help with wayfinding in the hospital in the form of a main plaza at the top of the hill. These plazas knit through the preservation of mature trees on the escarpment and allow for the site to be porous and inviting. In fact, perhaps transformational in the way we seek to integrate landscape, walking, cycling, and other pathways in the natural realm as part of the first impression as one arrives and enters into the facility. So beyond the plazas, the team is excited by the opportunity to link the existing LRT station to the north of the site with an access point to the south, and to redevelop Queen Juliana Park on the roof of the parking infrastructure required by the hospital and the site. This offering a whole host of opportunities for activity and activation while giving this part of the site back to the city. Not only will this become a hospital integrated into the natural fabric, but also a hospital stitched into the network of public transit. You know, in many ways, we've joked that the TOH acronym might someday signify transit-oriented hospital as much as it does the Ottawa Hospital. And just as the link to the transit station ties to the broader network of the city, there's a strong desire to animate the local street front along Carling by complementing the development to the north of the street and to complete a vibrant space at the foot of innovation, education, and health sciences research that will inhabit the site. And speaking of research, we see this as an integrated approach into the development while allowing for the opportunity to be front row center, a strong economic attractor in the region with the capability to expand. In the future, as Cam mentioned, the Heart Institute is planned to come onto the site with its own identity and place. The ongoing planning is ensuring that it will be able to immediately link to the vital services, such as emergency and surgical suites. Even the loading docks are co-located from day one to tie to the future Heart Institute to maintain a highly efficient materials management system. Let's take a section through the site and have a look at key elements within the hospital. You'll see here the section appear at the bottom of the screen, and the LRT tracks in the bottom right and the underground utility plant in the bottom left. We'll zoom in here a little. So with number one, this is the parkade with Queen Juliana Park on the roof and the pedestrian bridge through the hospital from the link to the LRT. Number two is the main entrance and main plaza. Number three is the covered public emergency entrance, a really key element in our winter weather. Number four is a light well offering access to daylight through the central podium area. Number five in the bottom left is the ambulance garage discreetly lowered into the landscape out of view of the farm. And finally, the helipad on the south tower with the direct and immediate access to the trauma elevators and key departments. A glance at the main plaza demonstrates the primary vehicular access, a safe slope through the escarpment that allows for queuing and short-term parking at the main entrance drop-off. On the left, you'll see covered pedestrian access through from the LRT station parking in Queen Juliana Park. And on the right, outdoor walkways that connect up through the broader series of pathways on the site to the urban plaza and beyond. And ultimately, the covered emergency access up from here is for the public, not for the ambulances. This is the first decision point as one enters the escarpment, the most immediately accessible entry for members of the public under duress to safely and swiftly get under cover and into the emergency department. To the left are the various floors of the hospital shown stacked vertically. On the right is the outline of the main floor plan. And as one enters, a front concourse is designed to develop an ease of wayfinding for the main building and focus. The main tower elevator lobbies are located on either side. There's a central courtyard that allows for key public areas to gain access to daylight and offers a third vertical elevator lobby to foster flexible and adaptable building chassis for future healthcare needs. Outpatient clinics are located close to the main entrance to minimize walking distance and to segregate patient flows in the facility. Food and retail are located adjacent to the main entrance and near the path from the transit and parking, en route, yet easily segregated for periods when operations may call for change, such as the present. The main concourse and elevators form part of a clear and simple vertical circulation system that travels up through the building, allowing visitors to be able to look back towards the main plaza for orientation. This framework alone cuts the average travel distance for the public to each of the departments in half relative to the existing civic site. The team has been able to achieve this even while new standards are causing for larger spaces and typically longer distances. Again, perhaps transformational in terms of the design's operational efficiency, maximizing time for patient care. Here, there's a view back from the concourse, not only to the main plaza, but also framing the Preston Carling district as it begins to grow and densify in the background. One floor below the main floor is where the emergency department is located, the covered public drop-off under the main plaza, and the segregated emergency vehicle access. But the ambulance garage is along the southwest, adjacent to the trauma elevators here in the bottom of the screen. The lowest floor, and the one aligned with the loading docks, allows for efficient materials management to reach the 4 quadrants of the facility. Each quadrant includes a bank of service elevators that rise up through the facility for immediate distribution on all floors without crossing the public. The second floor is a key driver for the hospital. This is a high-tech integrated surgical and interventional platform. Although a significant sized floor plate, the design still affords access to daylight for patients and staff in key areas of the preparation and recovery zones. This floor, as one contiguous state-of-the-art platform, is what sets the size of the total facility. We also have worked with the TOH team to develop a front-facing and secure mental health area, including clinics and inpatient units. By developing rooftop courtyards, we're able to allow for access to the out of doors in a controlled environment that is safe while bringing ample daylight into key areas. We're also able to segregate public access from staff and service movement in a dignified manner for optimal safety and efficiency. As we rise up in the towers, the public elevators lobbies open to views of the main plaza, continuously orienting visitors throughout their journey. The service elevators in each quadrant discreetly marshal goods up through the patient towers and also allow for patient transfers throughout the facility while promoting a sense of calm around the patient rooms. Each tower floor is designed to accommodate a precise number of single patient rooms developed in pods that relate to staffing ratios and the requirement for associated services in a manner that can be fully segregated for flows, especially during a pandemic. And each floor includes education and staff spaces adjacent to elevator lobbies to complement the Academic Health Sciences Center. The roof of the South Tower includes a helipad serving the trauma center with immediate access to all critical areas of the hospital. And a hospital integrated into such a wonderful site like this creates an amazing opportunity for further evidence-based medicine through access to views for patients to nature, proven to reduce length of stays. Whether those views are to Dow's Lake, Commissioners Park to the east, or perhaps views across the farm to the southwest. We see this ultimately as an amazing place to set the stage for world-class healthcare. Thank you, and back to you, Cam.
Thanks, Jason. So a few more slides just to wrap out the context of what Jason's outlined in terms of next steps in the capital planning process and timeline. So on this slide, you'll see this is a ministry's process. There's a 5-stage process. We are coming out of stage 2 into stage 3. And I think the important notable piece to this is when you do get to this stage, It is a fully endorsed ministry project. We have Infrastructure Ontario engaged now. So we're really into the implementation planning of this, as opposed to stage 1 and 2, which are really developing initial and preliminary plans that are brought forward for approval that the government supports. And so we're really at a stage now where we're tracking very well in terms of the timeline around having this under construction by 2024. Next slide, please. So I want to just comment to wrap this up. There's 2 other remaining slides here, but I think part of this is really thinking about this opportunity that I talked about in the beginning around the future of Ottawa's healthcare system. And so when you look at Ottawa, part of this is if you can think 10 years out, really where we're moving towards in terms of the transformation of healthcare is we will have 2 significant regional healthcare hubs in this region. One in the east, which is around the general campus where CHEO and the medical school is. And so if you look at the general campus is much like Princess Margaret of Toronto. Probably 80+% of all cancer activity is done out of the general. We still provide other services in there, such as transplant and obstetrics and neonatal intensive care units and other key programs. But it has really become a hub for cancer. And then we have satellites across the region as part of that hub. Obviously, we know CHEO is the main pediatric organization for the entire region, similar to what the Ottawa Hospital is, but on the pediatric side. And so we get a hub of healthcare where 100% of the complex care, whether it be cancer, pediatrics, plus a huge portion of adult and all of children care, resides out of that hub. Interestingly enough, when you think about the Civic now, if you take the new campus that we just walked you through, the existing campus that is beginning to evolve into a plan of creating a post-acute village focused around rehab and long-term care. And I think through the pandemic, as many of you are aware, one of our biggest challenges in this community is how we rebuild and grow capacity for long-term care centers. And so a huge portion of what comes out of the main trauma center for patients and families, many of them are discharged that require either movement through a rehab type support system or some type of post-acute care system that gets them either home or into a long-term care placement. And so part of what is evolving in our planning is with the existing Civic is to build this into a post-acute village. Our first phase that we've got approved is to build a long-term care center at the Riverside, and we are now under planning, which we'll be bringing forward back to the community probably in the beginning of 2022, with some initial thoughts around programmatically the requirements we need for the inner core of this community in terms of that capacity. And when you go further west, you have the Royal Ottawa. So if you think about University Avenue in Toronto, where you have Sinai, Sick Kids, UHN, this in essence becomes our second major healthcare hub where you have your trauma center, your complex mental health care, and a post-acute village wrapped around rehab. And so you get a second healthcare hub for the region. So with those 2 hubs in mind, there are a couple of other opportunities that I think are really important to note. One is we have a number of discussions underway with the research building that Jason showed you around really become a national research center of excellence. Without question, the development of our neuroscience research and our neuroscience program on this campus, it is already one that is world renowned from a clinical perspective and a research perspective. Putting it all together into one integrated center will be absolutely something that'll be core to what we'll do for this community in Ottawa, but it will have an opportunity to become a nationally recognized research center. In addition to that, the discussions we're having with Ag Canada on how we combine health and agriculture research can absolutely be a focal point for the community as a national research center as well that gives it more prominence within this campus. The education center is key, as I talked about before, and so a lot of work with our education partners with University of Ottawa, Carleton, and Algonquin and Leslie in terms of how we create simulation center type infrastructure, which is an evolution of what's happening with the education of healthcare professionals in the future. And then I think the last piece, which has really exploded through the pandemic, is how we use virtual care to support patients and families as an organization, as the Ottawa Hospital. A large portion of what we do now is patients are able to be managed at home, monitored at home. They have their AmCare visits at home. We can get various supplies to them in the home environment. Part of this evolves. This campus in particular, a lot of patients still require face-to-face visits because of the severity of their diseases and illnesses and injuries. But as we work through those ambulatory care visits, many of them are going to have follow-up visits into the future that will be monitored from home. And so part of what we are working towards in that corner building is to create basically a virtual hospital or virtual healthcare hub that provides, in essence, a central command center that we can innovate around how we provide those services in the home environment and how we integrate them closely with the tertiary or the complex levels of care once they're in hospital, and how that discharge process works. And so this is happening a little bit around the globe, and a lot of people are doing this through the pandemic in terms of just being able to manage. But this is turning into a platform that we can be an absolute leader with, definitely within Ontario and probably within Canada, in terms of creating this virtual healthcare hub. Next slide, please. I think this is the last slide. Nope, one more. So I wanted to give you just a snapshot, a timeline, just to round this out. So as we come through 2021, we are on schedule to get approval from the government in 2021 in terms of the overall stage 2 plan. We're looking at trying to organize an early works project for the parking garage to be issued in 2022. So we're under development of the parking garage. And I think there's two real key reasons for that. One is because it can be done as an independent component, but more importantly, we need to create that infrastructure to support the development of the main building. When you think about the amount of construction on a $2 billion project, the number of people coming to and from the site, we have to have the capability to have some way to stage them and park them on the site to support the development. As we're building the parking garage, through all of 2022, we will finish the design process, and then we're slated with Infrastructure Ontario to be out to RFP, in essence, for the business and financial plan, and close in 2023 and under construction by 2024. And based on current work in terms of how much the size of development, this is at least a 3 to 4 year construction project. And obviously those timelines will be finalized when tenders close with the 2023 schedule, but it'll be in the 4-year frame with a grand opening sometime in 2028. And last slide, please. So in terms of next steps, as I said, we're working through this. We've done our stage 2 submission. We're working with ministry that's pending approval heading into the summer 2021. We will start another regional public engagement process. So like we did the first time around, we have lots of groups that we're going to be consulting with, ranging from the outer edges of Ottawa, from Barry's Bay to Hawkesbury to Cornwall, as we're the regional referral center, but all the local community groups that we've consulted with, plus the various populations, the Indigenous population, various accessibility groups, and Nunavut, to do another public engagement process. We'll start that. We're saying May as we head into May now. We'll be working through May, probably all the way through till September, October. At the same time, working with the City of Ottawa and the National Capital Commission in terms of the process with them, in terms of the site plan and some of the design requirements, et cetera. And then we would plan to pull all of that together while we issue the early works project for the parking garage sometime in early 2022, and finish off all the design process through 2022, heading into 2023. And so that gives you a sort of sketched out snapshot of our timeline. We've had great support to date from both the city, the community, the ministry, and it really has turned into something tremendously exciting, as we've talked about today, in terms of a massive opportunity. It's not only a city building project, but a significant healthcare transformation projects that'll support our kids and for generations to come. So with that, Mayor Watson, I think we'll stop there, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Jason and Catherine, or Cameron and Catherine, for a very thorough presentation. We have 3 public delegations, and then we'll go to members of council. So first is Dr. Jody Warman-Chardon, a neurologist at the Ottawa Hospital. So if we can invite Dr. Warman-Chardon to join our Zoom call.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Jody Warman-Chardon. I'm a neurologist and clinician scientist at the Ottawa Hospital. I have the honor of caring for patients with some of the most devastating neurological diseases, including ALS, known as Lou Gehrig disease, Parkinson's disease, stroke, and dementia. At the Ottawa Hospital, my research focuses on finding faster ways to diagnose and find the underlying causes of these debilitating diseases. A few years ago, we would look at a gene by gene approach, and now we can assess billions of pieces of DNA all at the same time. Finding the underlying cause is critical to better understanding many neurological diseases and lead us to a cure. We recently had 2 young patients, brothers that were losing all the strength in their hands and feet and going blind. With our advanced special technologies at the Ottawa Hospital, we discovered that they were genetically unable to absorb specific vitamins and minerals that were causing the dying back of their nerves. That amazing discovery led to a rapid treatment, and not only have their lives been transformed, but so have all the patients across the world that can now be treated before they lose their sight or ability to walk. At the Ottawa Hospital, we are recognized internationally for how we integrate our research discoveries and innovation into the care for our patients. We are one of the largest academic research hospitals in the country. Ottawa now has one of the largest and most successful group of neuroscience physicians and scientists in the world whose groundbreaking discoveries are bringing us closer to new treatments every day. The new treatments and technological discoveries developed right here have a worldwide impact, and we are incredibly proud of that. The new campus will be a game changer for patients with neurological disease. We will have state-of-the-art equipment to be able to provide faster diagnosis for our patients, and together we will find the answers to transform their care. Importantly, when this new hospital opens, it will have space for research integrated right within the clinical areas. This means that researchers and scientists are integrated as part of the hospital's everyday work. This means that we will also be able to develop the most exciting and promising clinical trials and be able to offer them right here in Ottawa. The new Civic will have cutting-edge facilities and dedicated research space, which will help us attract the best and the brightest from around the world and make Ottawa a hub of innovative research. And when those talented researchers and scientists come here to create the future of healthcare, our patients will be the first ones to benefit from this cutting-edge and life-saving treatments. I am so proud to be part of the dedicated team of researchers, clinicians, and physicians at the Ottawa Hospital who are working so hard to support the many patients and their families who depend on us. Just imagine what we could do with new facilities and better clinical integration. With this new research campus, the Ottawa Hospital will be able to provide faster diagnosis and to conduct more research, which will lead to the ultimate goal of finding more cures for our patients. This new Civic campus makes me optimistic for the future. I am optimistic that when I'm trying to compassionately provide the devastating diagnosis of ALS to the businessman who's just getting ready to retire, or to the grandmother in her 60s expecting her first grandchild, or the 32-year-old mother of 3 who just had a baby, that we'll be able to say we have a cure, and we found that cure right here in Ottawa. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Doctor. Does anyone on a committee have a question for the doctor? Okay, thank you very much. Next is Bushra Saeed Khan. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Bushra Saeed Khan, and I've been cared for by the Ottawa Hospital since 2010 after being severely injured while working in Afghanistan as a federal government employee. On December 30th, 2009, the light armored vehicle I was traveling in hit an improvised explosive device, and I was one of the few to survive. My entire body was affected by the blast. The force of the explosion was so fierce, it left my abdomen exposed, my legs critically wounded, and a portion of one leg completely gone. I was initially airlifted from the military hospital in Kandahar to a hospital in Germany before being transferred back home to the Ottawa Hospital, where I woke up from my coma. It's been a long journey from trauma to healing after approximately 50 surgeries and years of intensive rehab, but I am here today because of the Ottawa Hospital. From the moment I arrived at the trauma center to the many years of intensive support at the rehab center, my care has been absolutely phenomenal. The Ottawa Hospital team gave me and my family our lives back. But one thing we learned along the way when I was being cared for at the Civic campus and the rehabilitation center was just how outdated these buildings had become. Yes, I received incredible care from the best team I could ask for, but the circumstances they're working under are challenging, and this creates challenges for patients. For example, as mentioned today, when a trauma patient arrives by air ambulance, the helicopter lands across the street and patients have to be transported across busy Carling Avenue to the hospital. With the new campus, patients like me will land on a rooftop helipad and an elevator will take them directly to the trauma center. I arrived at the hospital on a cold winter day in January, so fully understand the importance of interior access. Single patient rooms are also critical. I remember the weeks when my PTSD was most extreme and my night terrors caused me to wake up screaming. I still feel so badly for waking up my roommates in such an intense way in the middle of the night, especially when they were also trying to recover and heal. While my mother was able to stay with me the nights I needed her most, it was exhausting for her. The new campus will provide room for family members to stay and rest. I can't tell you what a difference this would have made for my mother, given how much her support helped my recovery, though how difficult it was for her after so many uncomfortable and sleepless nights. Increased accessibility is another area where the aging campus has outgrown itself. When I was pregnant with my first child, I needed to temporarily switch into a wheelchair in my third trimester because I could no longer walk with ease in my prosthetic leg. As I prepped for my C-section, my care team worked together to find the most accessible birthing room possible, one with a door frame wide enough to fit my wheelchair and a washroom that could also fit my wheelchair, as well as a bed that could be lowered. These are not easy to find at the Civic campus, which was built over 100 years ago. Today, I'm thrilled to be expecting my second child, and my doctor is currently looking into options for accessible rooms. I very much hope we're able to find one. The new campus will epitomize excellence in universal accessibility, which is exactly what patients of all ages need, whether with permanent disabilities like myself or temporary medical issues. While I was receiving care, the accessibility of the building enabled me to safely recover in an environment that met my needs. At the Ottawa Hospital, I learned to walk with a prosthetic leg, eat solid foods and drink liquids again, address my PTSD, drive a modified vehicle, and eventually return to work full-time, then raise a family. The hospital provided a holistic approach to my recovery and successfully prepared me to reintegrate into the community as a newly disabled but independent woman. This included care from physiotherapists, psychologists, nutritionists, and social workers, among others specialized and highly trained staff. As I was often not strong enough to even push my own wheelchair, let alone transfer into a vehicle for an important surgery or attend an appointment in another part of the city on a snowy winter day, accessible care was an enormous benefit. As I continue to receive support from the Ottawa Hospital, such as prosthetic care, it is not only exciting, but a huge relief to know that my care will evolve to keep up with new technologies and opportunities to maintain my health and independent standard of living. I've experienced the world-class care from the medical team at the Ottawa Hospital throughout my medical journey, from life-saving surgeries, recovery, and ongoing specialized treatments. However, I truly believe as our city continues to grow, it's time to give our medical teams the state-of-the-art facilities needed to help patients and for all of us to receive advanced, immediate, and long-term care. Thank you for your time.
Wow, what a remarkable presentation. Thank you very, very much, Ms. Saeed Khan, and thank you for being such an amazing role model and an advocate for the Civic and for healthcare. And thank you, of course, for your service to our country. And we wish you the very best on the birth of your second child. That's very exciting for you. And I see fellow veteran Matt Luloff has his hand up to ask a question. Councillor.
Bushra, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming out and sharing your story today. It's truly inspiring. Your home neighborhood of Orleans is so proud of you, and congratulations on your second child.
Thank you. My parents are still in Orleans.
Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it, and good luck with your second. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for Ms. Saeed Khan? Well, thank you again very much. That was a beautiful presentation, and I know you put a lot of thought into that. And it's nice to hear from someone who's benefited from the great work at the Civic, but you're quite right. It was a building built 100 years ago and pieces added on and the helicopter pad across the street and so on. It's not the most efficient operation for today's medicine. So you've been a great advocate, and we appreciate you taking the time, and thank you very much. Let's see. And our final guest speaker is someone familiar to most Ottawans. Jim Durrell is with us. Mr. Durrell, welcome to FEDCO. We see you there, Jim.
Thank you, Your Worship.
There we go.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
All right. It's a very tough act to follow, Mr. Mayor. My goodness. I've had the privilege over the years of attending the President's Breakfast often, and I've heard stories like Bushra's so often from patients, and it's something that I wish every Ottowan could attend. Like everybody who's in the room today, I've grown up with the Ottawa Civic, and my first interaction really happened 70 years ago or so when I was about 5 years old. I was probably about 1 minute away from drowning and rushed from our family hospital in Pembroke up to the Civic by ambulance. And in the course of that, they felt that I had polio, and there was no vaccines back then. So I learned way back in those early years what quarantine was. We were quarantined for several weeks in the hospital and not seeing your parents at all. I was one of the fortunate ones, and I was discharged and came away without any issues. And as we all know, over the last 70 years, this hospital has moved hand in hand. As Ottawa's grown, so is the Ottawa Hospital. And much like Ottawa is changing, and your comments earlier about light rail and all of the exciting things that are happening in our city, the Ottawa Hospital is going to need, and the Civic particularly as the main campus, is going to require that same transformation. I often equate great cities to a simple old chair, Mr. Mayor, and a great chair has 4 strong legs. And in no particular order, the first leg is obviously a strong, healthy economic environment, which we're blessed as a capital to have the federal government here, which gives us great stability and a booming technology business. The second would be a vibrant arts and entertainment community. And we have that, and it continues to transform very nicely. The third is strong education, third leg. And as both Cameron and others have enunciated today, with Ottawa U, Carleton, Algonquin, City Collegiale, we have an unbelievable base to build further research within our universities. But the fourth leg, and I would submit to you, sir, that is the most important of all, is a vibrant healthcare system, a world-class healthcare system. And today is step one for the City of Ottawa to embrace that. And what that allows us to do is not only provide you and I and our families and our extended families with great healthcare, but what it does is it allows us to support the other 3 areas. You can't attract great researchers, great doctors, if you haven't got great facilities. You're Terry Matthews, you can't hire the world sort of leaders in technology, et cetera, if you haven't got a great healthcare system. It's one of the first questions that anybody of consequence, whether you're a doctor or a successful businessman or businesswoman, is going to ask about a particular community and what are your healthcare facilities like. This Ottawa Civic, the new Civic campus, as you enunciated at the very start, will transform Ottawa and how it acts. And so I applaud the city for looking at this. I encourage the committee to endorse it and to move it on and be a part of city building as we continue. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. As always, we appreciate your wisdom and input into so many different issues that you've been involved with in our community. Does anyone have a question for Mr. Durrell? Oh, great. Thank you very much, Jim, again. Appreciate it. And for the work that you've done with the President's Breakfast for many, many years. We have a couple of people that have their hands up. I'm going to ask Councillor Brockington to speak first. The ward, the hospital right now touches many different wards, but when the new boundaries come into effect, it will be within a River Ward. So Councillor Brockington has the floor, and then we'll hand it over to the Chair of Planning Committee, Councillor Harder.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and good morning to you and fellow colleagues. Ms. Cotton, Mr. Love, and Mr. Groen, thank you for your presentation this morning. As the local councillor for River Ward, the ward that will welcome the new Civic. I share the same excitement, enthusiasm, and optimism that this significant healthcare project will yield for our city and for our region. This will be a world-class healthcare and academic center. And as previously stated, this will provide thousands of direct and indirect well-paid jobs, both for the actual construction teams, but within the actual hospital itself when it opens. 6 days after I was first elected, Minister John Baird announced the former federal government's intent to yield local land for this project. Communication, updates, and genuine overtures to stay connected and discuss local issues and impacts have been appreciated, first under Dr. Jack Kitt's leadership and now under Mr. Love. While my residents are interested in the design of the actual buildings and the type of medical services that will be offered inside, their main interests are to better understand the impacts of the new campus and construction process will have on local neighborhoods. We are interested in continued dialogue and collaboration on the road and active transportation networks, LRT opportunities with the Dow's Lake Station, local bus service, mixed-use development opportunities along Carling, Queensway exits, on-site green space and tree retention, the preservation of the Dominion Observatory, parking for Dow's Lake Pavilion and Tulip Festival guests, and how to protect remaining experimental farmlands going forward. Our community supports the current hospital and its long history in our city. We want to build the same positive memories and experiences with the new hospital. Both of my daughters were born there. I commend the plans to date from the senior management team and look forward on behalf of all River Ward residents for continued and meaningful dialogue. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Now to Councillor Harder, who obviously has been briefed on this project and will play a significant role as a result of being the chair of the planning committee. So Councillor, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Watson, and thank you for providing the opportunity for the Ottawa Hospital to come before us today. And thank you, Cameron Love, for agreeing to so that we are actually launching the status and where we are right now today with Ottawa Civic Trauma Center. It's a great opportunity. And, you know, I think it's important that all the public that are watching really truly understand what this means for Ottawa. I think that the speakers that you had come in and who spoke on behalf of this fabulous initiative investment in healthcare really laid out the story. You know, I heard Councillor Brockington talking about his two daughters was born there. I was born there, 1951. I was born there. I mean, it's been a part of Ottawa's family for so long. And, you know, if you remember about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, the City of Ottawa and the Planning Committee, we pre-zoned the land. And I'm just wondering whether you feel that this helped and will help getting the province's support, identifying it as a major employment hub. Do you think that being ready with as much we can do at the city is going to be a help to you?
Yeah, can I answer that, Mayor Watson?
Yes, please.
Okay. So thank you very much, Councillor Harder, for the question and the comments. And the short answer is 100%. I think one of the things that has been tremendously helpful is the support through your planning committee, through Steve Willis's team, and the work that's been done to date. And I think it's positioned us extremely well with the province. We've had, as we put this submission in, I think what the province has been very, I'm going to say, impressed with is the amount of thinking through all the details. And as you know, we have Graham Burton Associates as part of our team, obviously Jason and group. We have put a lot of thought into this, but it's been tremendously helpful with what, as you said, what went through planning committee, but also the guidance and discussions that have been ongoing with city and city staff. And so I think it's been tremendously helpful. I think it's positioned us extremely well. And we're down to some finer strokes with ministry around this stage to approval, and it positions us very well to what Councillor Brocklington has identified as some key issues that we have to go through and have further discussion and consultation on to move through this into this stage 3 into the development on time, which I think is absolutely critical. And so that support, as Mayor Watson outlined at the beginning, has been hugely effective in terms of moving us forward.
Well, and as you know, we've identified one of our senior planners to work on this file, Sean Moore. And I know that Sean's keeping us apprised, and we're ready lockstep to work with you to make sure that as the needs come up along the way, that we'll be hand in hand with the Ottawa Hospital. I also wanted to mention that, you know, the official plan, the new official plan, we're going to be approving that as a city at the end of September this year, and how important that is that we've actually identified the Ottawa Hospital as a crucial piece of the go forward for our city in our future over the next 25 years and beyond. And I'm just wondering, because of the incredible amount of support you're going to have to get financially, have you started that fundraising part yet? And how can we get involved?
So we have started a fundraising effort in terms of a plan. So with the announcement of stage 2 through our foundation, we have a goal of $400 million to be raised. A cabinet has been formed that's overseeing that. And their plan in terms of the details of the launch and moving forward with that plan will probably occur as we head into the summer and fall with this announcements of this next stage. And so as the foundation rolls that out, there is no question we've had tremendous community support within the foundation and that cabinet. But to your point, Jan, I think further dialogue around how through the city we can provide further support on that is going to be something that will be part of this next phase of planning with the foundation. But it is a $400 million campaign that has not formally been launched widespread, but the plan for it is underway, and that will be coming over the course of the next this next year for sure.
And just one last area I wanted to touch on, and that is you talked about the investment in research as a benefit to learning and you know, certainly continue the work that Dr. Bell and many others have initiated in the earlier days and continue to do so. You know, I'm thinking that with Area X.0, which is the farm out in front of the Nepean Sportsplex, with all that we're doing there, I know that 3.5 years ago or so, an international company, major international company, I set up a meeting with Dr. Kitts, and I think you were there too, weren't you, Cameron?
Yep.
And they were interested in the tie-in between agriculture and between health science, and particularly interested in the fact that you were building, you know, it was our goal to be building the new civic trauma. Are you seeing or hearing more of that interest, that incredibly important interest and investment in our city?
So yes, and I just to expand on that, I think it's a great point, Jan. And when I talked just very briefly at the beginning on that dimension of economic growth and development, one of the pieces that is so critical to the fabric of what we're trying to do here in terms of research and advancing care is that support out of private sector. And obviously there's the support that they may contribute to financially, but the bigger support is their engagement in terms of how we're going to drive the health research agenda. And so you heard from Dr. Warman before. So Dr. Warman is an internationally recognized clinician and researcher. To her comment of what she said in terms of what's happening with ALS, same with MS, same with stroke. The benefit of having those partnerships is they create beacons within the industry that allow us to propel research and get further support out of the private sector to help us innovate and advance research that allows us to recruit people from across the globe. So if I look over the last probably 10 years, we've recruited 60 to 100 physicians, clinicians, and scientists from across the globe. The reason they're coming here is because of the research and the opportunity for growth. And as their research comes to fruition, it allows us to put the first advancements of care into this community. The one that's probably most notable, other than the one that Jody spoke to, is if you think back it's probably 2 years ago now, there was a worldwide publication from Dr. Friedman and Dr. Atkins around finding a cure for a particular type of MS. That is because of research and the partnerships with the private sector in terms of that research agenda is what allowed some of that to transpire and grow. So the piece that you're talking about, and I know the company you're referring to, that is one of about 5 or 7 that we're exploring very carefully in terms of how we advance this research agenda between health and agriculture. And so the short answer is that I think this is one of these things that building this research tower is going to capitalize on that, but it's a starting point. And when you think over 10 to 20 years, the opportunity on growth around that, with an example of you just said, those are givens. And so we've got a very good foundation to build that from.
Thanks very much. And thank you again for today.
Great thing. I didn't know you were born there. I know Princess Marguerite was born there as well.
She's a bit older than me.
Vice Chair Dudas, please.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. I just wanted to follow up on Chair Harder's comments there. I think I was taken a little bit aback that even before this conversation about such a transformational world-class project, your report for 2019-2020 stated that you generated $1.8 billion of beneficial impact on the city's economy since 2001, based on your research. And so, you know, this project is not only going to be transformational for the healthcare for residents of Ottawa, but it's going to once again heighten our international profile, which, you know, Cameron, you so eloquently put a moment ago. And I just was wondering if you could elaborate a little more. We often hear about world-class, because I have a very large dog who likes to talk a lot. But maybe once again, in terms of world-class, you spoke about the economic, you spoke about the jobs this is going to create. How will this position our city on the international stage in terms of not only the Civic Campus, but our relationships, our CHEO? We have the Montfort Health Hub coming. Like, our city is changing, and I would like you to just put a little bit more perspective on that.
Yeah, so great comment, Councillor Dudas. So maybe I can use a couple of examples by way of example to help frame that. So when you look at hospitals, we're made up of a large number of programs. And so if I think about something like neurosciences, which Dr. Warman spoke to, that's broken into stroke and Parkinson's and ALS and epilepsy. And for each one of those programs, we've built infrastructure that focuses on clinical treatment and research excellence. And so when Dr. Warman commented on the fact we have the largest congregation of researchers, of neuroscience researchers, they are now at the General and the Civic. As we build this new Civic, we will congregate them all together in one location, build all the research facility around that. And what that does is it starts to create different opportunities for joint research projects among them, research grants, and an opportunity to create a beacon as a neuroscience center of excellence because of the physical infrastructure. And the physical infrastructure is important because it creates a landing spot. So as you look at neuroscience, now what we've got a number of companies that want to partner with us because of the research they're doing to grow that research that advances the care. As they advance care, they get more grants. As they get more grants, they become both national and international publications, which generates a reputation as a world-class neuroscience facility, which allows us to recruit people from all across the globe. From a clinical perspective within the region, this is where this integrated model is so important. So if you take stroke, for example, and to your point, and this will really focus on Montfort, Queensway, Pembroke, Cornwall, Hawkesbury, lots of patients come into those emergency departments that have various forms of strokes. Any patient in Ottawa Central is typically coming to the Civic that has very complex strokes. Here's the catch with the integrated model is if you're a patient in Pembroke that presents in the emergency department, you want to know that you're getting the same treatment and care for your stroke as what you'd get if you came to the regional hub, which was the Civic. Part of what the stroke program does is it works with the hospitals around the region to create standards for how we're managed and transfer protocols that allows patients to get care in the same manner from a primary, secondary perspective in those outlying hospitals. But if they require complex care, they're quickly shuttled by the same team into Ottawa. And so from a clinical perspective, the integration that occurs for things like kidney disease, stroke, neurosciences. A lot of that platform is how we work together as a community to create clinical advancement, but the hub of doing the research to advance those programs and change the clinical protocols happens out of the civic and the general. The general predominantly with cancer, the civic for the programs that I've talked about today. And so as we grow those programs and we get more researchers, we tend to create larger profiles, larger grants, tighter relationships with the universities. So kidney, cancer, neuro, vascular, cardiac, those are big five. There's others that go on beyond that with obstetrics and NICU, but all of them have very much a research focus. And I think the real importance of that is it allows, to what I've said, allow us to grow. But the bigger piece for this community is if we do the research and we have that capacity, the breakthrough treatments come first to this community. That's why it's so important to keep research as a pillar within this community.
It's extremely exciting. And, I'm so pleased that our city, our municipal government can support you in this initiative. And I look forward to seeing it come to fruition. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Fleury, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, good morning, everyone. It's very exciting to see such an important project take form. And like Councillor Brockington, I remember the previous political battles on where this would be located. So it's good to finally advance it and see it through. Cameron, two quick questions, and I might have missed it, but what is the future of the Heart Institute on the current site? Because there's been hundreds of millions of dollars. It's been upgraded recently. So can you maybe, it's great to know where we're going, but I don't know if you could speak to the existing amenity.
Yeah, for sure. Great question, Councillor Fleury. So as I said, the plan that Jason walked you through and showed the location, the Heart Institute, as we've designed this new design, will be, we've planned it so we know exactly where the heart is. So when the heart transfers in the future, how cardiac patients come into the emergency department, how the ORs function, the beds, it's all integrated into that plan. In the start, it won't be there. And so, it may just be grassland at the start, or we'll do something with it as Jason outlined. The heart will stay at the existing civic. And to your point, with the development of that new tower, which is just tremendous in terms of what they do for critical and surgical care in the Heart Institute, that will be staying at the existing civic and moved as a second phase. The second phase timeline has not been determined, but it'll definitely be, beyond that 2030 mark, because we're opening this in 2028. So between myself, Dr. Masana, and the team there, part of what we are working on now is how, as we move everything but the heart, there's a transition plan that's required in terms of how we manage patients between the heart and the existing civic. And it's very similar, like the Heart Institute is a world-class center, and much like I described with neuro, is what heart does for, the Heart Institute does for the heart. So whether you're a patient that is coming from Hawkesbury, Kemptville, Cornwall, wherever, same thing with cardiac as it is for neuro. What we have at the general is we have a cardiology program at the general campus that we manage cardiology patients with the Heart Institute there. Anything that's complex gets moved to the Heart Institute. We will do a similar type of transition with the civic while we figure out timeframes by which we move the current Heart Institute to the final configuration over the course of time. So the maintenance around the care of the programs and the support of their research will continue on this site until we transfer it. But what we will be doing is heading into fall of 2021 into 2022. I'd commented before on the plans for post-acute care on the existing campus. We will lay out the entire plan that we'll be bringing back through the city and an engagement process, which we really can't do anything with until 2028, but we'll at least start the planning because there's a need with our local community and around the capacity for long-term care and rehab and those types of things. So we'll lay out the plan so we've got an agreement on a plan, and then the transition planning will occur between now and 2028 for both that and the Heart Institute.
It's good to know the logic has been thought through, and also those investments done at the Heart Institute are not lost. So that's great to hear. Maybe on a final point, so Ottawa's a growing city, and it was interesting when you talk about the hub model and best practices. How are you projecting, or how are you calculating what is needed in research, but then also what is needed in terms of bed and growth? Because that's what I'm hearing from so many communities, and that's what I'm seeing is that pressure. And we have to maybe also say we're taking a lot of patients from Gatineau, which is again a uniqueness of our region, but adds the complexity as both large cities are growing significantly.
Yeah. So maybe I can, it's a great question, Matt. I'll answer it in three ways. So one of the things that today is very different than 10 or 15 years ago is the robust level of data that we have. That our data platforms and being able to track data all the way down to a patient-specific level and a disease-specific level gives us great ability to forecast for the future the demand and what's required. So we have an entire ClinEpi group. Dr. Alan Forrester is our VP of Quality Innovation, runs our entire data platform. And so for every single program, we are able to see over the last 10 years and today where patients are coming from and for what treatment. And more importantly, with census data and growth in population by age, we can predict the incidence of disease. So we can map out by program, whether it's, for example, for obstetrics, the number of births has been somewhat flatlined. We're going to see a bit of growth over time, and that's part of it with the census planning of the number of births in the community. Whereas the number of general medicine patients, because of the aging population, the incidence of disease around things like COPD and CHF and diabetes, we know the growth for the 70+ population, because it's the biggest cohort of growth, is we need to plan for that bed capacity. So for every single program, we map all the data, identify the requirements, both from an inpatient and outpatient perspective, and then with the medical leadership, identify where our focuses are for research. And when you blend all those together, what you get is the base campus and the design. Having said that, we plan this to open 2030 in those projections. Part of the plan is looking at projections out to 2050. So, and building in capacity if we have to add more beds or add more clinics, that we're not changing the configuration and the campus and how efficient it'll be to start. We just add stackable capacity to it. And that's why you see the tower where one side's lower than the other, is because we can add beds over time. So that's point two. And then the third point is to what Councillor Dudas raised, is a lot of the work we're doing for services like surgery is integrated programs. So if you take Kemptville today, we do 300 joints, spinal surgery, knees out in Kemptville. It's all part of one integrated program. So we're able to move activity to some of the regions that's closer to home, but as part of that hub model, but we still have to plan for the complex things like spinal surgery that'll be at the Civic just because of the nature and the condition. So all that gets factored into these projections on how we programmatically outline the design.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Next is Councillor Leeper. And I know one of the first issues that I raised with Cameron was, Jeff, the Ruskin Street parking lot, to make sure that that's converted back to parkland when the hospital moves, as per the agreement by the old City of Ottawa. So I appreciate, Cameron, your commitment to making sure that that happens. So that's a big deal in Jeff's community. Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for putting that on the record again. I know we have that commitment from both the hospital and the mayor, and it's something that the community is looking forward to very much. And I'll try to stay really high level this morning. One of the key discussions in Kitchissippi Ward, which is one of the sort of four corners of this new location, is around transportation traffic. The hospital has the potential to profoundly change traffic patterns in sort of the near west to downtown area. When can the community expect to see some studies of what those impacts are likely to be? We really need to start moving people onto Carling Avenue as the spine that it can be. What are the plans to try to do that? It's been a very superficial discussion in the community up to this point. We're not getting a lot of information. What can the community expect to see over the course of the next year or so?
Yeah, good question, Councillor Leeper. So as we move into the summer and we get confirmation of this plan, as I said before, that's on the table right now with the ministry to approve in the summer, what that'll confirm is all the program requirements and allow us to update all of our traffic studies in terms of populations that are coming, both from the point of view of patients, families, and visitors that are coming into that quadrant at the bottom with for things like tulip festivals and those types of things. So part of what we will do is we'll update those traffic studies, and then we'll be coming back to your community, just like the other all the other communities that we have to consult with, to update on the transportation piece. And so that work in terms of doing this closely with the city and updating those studies, I'm going to say the summer, whether that's June, July, or August, we'll have that work through. But when I said the consultation from May to October, and that may swing by a month either way, a big piece of that is on transportation and traffic for all modes of traffic, how we capitalize on light rail, ambulance triage, those types of things. All of that you can expect as we head through between now and September to bring that information back forward.
Can I ask about the light rail? One of the things that our community can probably look forward to is even a potential reduction in the number of cars visiting as it gets hooked into light rail. That's going to be an ideal way for your thousands of staff to arrive at the hospital every day. How far along are plans for Carling Avenue Station and the ability to link that into the hospital? Or sorry, I guess now it's the Dow's Lake Station. How far along are those plans? Because I have not really seen anything concrete. And how certain is the availability of funding to ensure that that happens?
So Mayor Watson, do you want me to comment on that, or do you want, I don't know whether Steve Willis is on to comment?
Steve, are you available to comment? I think it's probably more of a...
Yes, Mayor, I'm just happy to answer that question. First and foremost, our staff from Transportation Services and Mr. Manconi may be on the call as well. Pat Scrimgeour's group has been working closely with the architects, the architects working for the hospital, look at several options to future-proof the building for transportation access. We're not pinning down on one option at this point in time. We are looking at multiple options and how they could come. And as we get the more detailed transportation analysis, we'll lock down on which is the strategy. But the goal is stations don't move, but access to stations absolutely can be something we can continue to work on. So that is at the next level of planning beyond where we're at today.
It is absolutely critical that we connect the hospital into the light rail station, and that's something that I know both Councillor Brockington and myself, Councillor Menard, Councillor McKenney will continue to seek updates on. With respect to the post-acute center, the existing civic. So I think this is the first public indication that there is a longer term plan. It's going to provide our community with some certainty that the land isn't going to be turned back over to the city, which will then turn it over to developers to be developed. When you talked about sort of immediately starting to plan that post-acute center. What does that mean in real terms? When can the community expect to potentially be invited to consultations on that?
Yeah, you know what? Don't hold me to this, Councillor Leeper, but I'm going to say middle of next year. Much to what I described for Councillor Fleury on the projections. Part of what we're working through right now, and I think, with the long-term care report out now, and we know our census and our projections, one of the areas where we are short in terms of capacity within Ottawa is long-term care, assisted living, and some of that other capacity support, which a lot of our patients need as they transfer out of particularly the civic and the general, as well as Queensway and Montfort. And so part of this is, as I described with the forecasting and numbers, programmatically working with ministry on how many beds do we need in the core and where those beds be situated. So as we work through that, we're going to get an indication of how many beds. And that's why the Riverside was approved right off the bat, 250 long-term care. There's going to be some transitional beds that go with it. But the numbers are far north of that in terms of the capacities required in the core. So what we've outlined is the model on this campus of creating rehab services, long-term care, community mental health, and other programmatic components. That's the concept. What we will now do is do all the program details so we can speak more specifically around how many beds and what type of services, how they get integrated into the entire health system. And then we'll do the design work and come up with some concepts. So this is something, we can't start on this until 2028. But what we do want to do is position with ministry for this community as the capacity we need. So we create the run rate on getting some of these developments planned. So as we get the new civic moved, we can continue on after that to build that capacity. Because this is, to be fair to everyone, the reality is that to build the type of capacity that we're talking about is probably a 10-year plan, and it's got to be staged. The Riverside will be stage one. There's others across the community that are going to be building some as well. We need the whole plan so we can specify what we'd have at the Civic. So that's the work this year. So I would say, give or take a couple of months, summerish next year, we'll be able to come back programmatically what we're planning, and then there'll be some concept drawings. And then we'll probably just work through a ministry process over the next 5 years. So we're positioned well to start right after that.
I know there'll be a significant number of questions coming into my office
sure.
around that. So,
Yep.
And then finally, in terms of the mechanisms, do you have all the zoning permissions you need at this point from the city? Is there anything that you're contemplating that might fall without the existing zoning permissions?
I believe we're in good shape, but maybe I can ask Jason Emery just to comment on that.
Thanks, Cam. Yes, indeed, we have a major component that relates to some of the holds that are on the general zoning on the property. And so as we move through with the site master plan application that is actually going in here soon, that also includes NCC review and approval of that planning. That will then complete the stage to allow the master site plan to then come into effect, which will then allow much more detail into each of the segments of the design process.
Okay. Will the city be entirely in the driver's seat at this point, or do you anticipate leaning on any provincial land use approvals?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if that's for me to answer, actually.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can take that question. So at this stage of the game, the official plan permits the hospital. The zoning bylaw permits the use of the hospital on the site. We have a series, as was indicated, we have a series of holding provisions in the zoning bylaw that need to be lifted. That's all that needs to be required other than the site plan approval to get their municipal approvals. So they will all have to get their federal design approvals through the NCC because it is the use of federal land. And they need Ministry of Health approvals that are not land use related. They are all about how the building is designed and operated, but they have land use implications, and we're always very cognizant of it. And really, if it's a very significant piece of getting the Ministry of Health approvals to the design.
And if I may just, with respect to the site plan approvals, ordinarily that's done at the municipal level. Do we anticipate that we'll be the ones who provide those, or is there the potential for ministerial zoning orders or something like that as well?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see any need for a ministerial zoning order in this situation. We have this well under control. Because this is a citywide project, and because it has implications on multiple wards, we will be bringing forward the site plan approval to planning committee because of how many wards are affected by it. So we will have a chance for an open and public process on this, and this will not be done through delegated approval as we normally do.
Fantastic. Those were my questions, Mr. Mayor. Cameron, I am excited to see this hospital. My staff got their first look at this morning, and they're texting me very excited to see this get built. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Councillor. Cameron, you mentioned the Riverside Hospital. What are the future plans for it? I wasn't clear where.
So
the Riverside campus.
Yeah, great question, Mayor Watson. So we have there is no plans for the Riverside in terms of changing the model of what we do from an acute care perspective. So right now it is basically 7 or 8 floors of centers of excellence for ambulatory care, diabetes, rheumatology, women's health, those types of things. Those will continue to remain there. We are looking at changing to some extent some of the services from an AmCare perspective that we plan within that building, but in the short term, it won't be expanded. The piece that is changing is the addition of long-term care and transitional care to that campus. And one of the things that we've learned through the pandemic, and we've had a lot of great work with and partnerships with long-term care facilities in this community, is as we plan out long-term care, a huge component of this is around the medical model and how we support patients in those homes, not just with family medicine, but those that may have diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis or those types of things or ailments. Part of putting it on this campus is to use the AmCare component to support the long-term care patients in that building as part of that regional model. So as we build out long-term care on that campus, we will be changing and working with our partner around the model of care that occurs, and then presumably that'll be replicated onto the Civic in the future.
And the other issue is that you referenced was ambulances going underground to park. Maybe you could just explain how the new process is working, since we secured those funds from the province to reduce the number of ambulances waiting by the Civic, for instance. Because obviously, if we don't solve that problem, you're going to need a lot more underground expensive space to have ambulance sitting idle.
Yeah. So part of the planning for this that actually helps with the ambulance offload, as you've outlined, Mayor Watson, is the I'll call it the OMTU, the tent that we built and set up adjacent to Civic, creates bed capacity to offload patients more quickly and create that capacity around the emergency department where we can send the ambulances right out. The forecast that we've got for beds that we've built at the new campus is about another 180 to 200 additional beds. So by default, what it does is it takes the benefit of the bed capacity we've created with the temporary, puts it into a permanent structure, which is far better from an infrastructure perspective, and allows the ambulances the same model we've created to be able to offload right away. Part of what we want to do is replicate that at the general, but at the Civic, the model that's been created, as we've been running since December, has made a significant difference in terms of ambulance offload. That model will be replicated into the new site. The underground component is really, particularly for the front entrance of the Emerge, where you get patients and families coming in on their own fruition, and the back end with the Emerge, having it underground and covered is a huge piece from the perspective, particularly in the winter, obviously, and just general weather. It's an element that I think is you're starting to see across the country in Canada, and particularly as you get into countries that have a lot of northern type climate, the underground model is becoming a standard for a lot of different reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Menard, please.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks, President Love, for your briefing previously on this, an exciting project, and really appreciate the the information you've been able to provide our office, and looking forward to working with you, very closely in the future on this. Councillor Leeper had raised the question of the LRT and the connectivity there, and the importance of that new station, and how we work that into our plans. Because obviously there's some preliminary plans that have already been done, but there's a need for integration directly on the site. So I guess to staff and to yourself, President Love, is there a plan right now to have connectivity of the LRT directly on that south side? Because we've got it on the north side where that station will be off Carling, but that south side connection, whether it be an actual station or a fulsome link, is going to be really important. So I guess could you elaborate on where those plans are now?
Mr. Mayor, if I may take a first shot at this, and if Mr. Manconi or Mr. Scrimgeour on the line can correct me if I misstep in any way. So first of all, stations don't move very easily, and the approach on the south side is on a downward slope to the Dow's Lake Tunnel, and we don't situate stations on downward slopes. Usually have to be on flat spaces. So our focus is on connectivity. And in lots of cities, you go to any major cities, Toronto, New York, Montreal, the station is really not particularly relevant. It's really how it connects in a weather protected way for people to get to the station, to wherever they're going. And the stations don't necessarily move, but there are underground or above grade connections. So we're studying both underground and above grade connections, and other ways that it might be able to punch through into the station. That won't settle, that work won't settle down to a little further in the design process, but we're very focused on getting weather protected access. That is what's most important.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll be really interested to see how that evolves. My community associations have been heavily involved here, and so I appreciate the work that's been done with those groups. So the campus engagement group has contributed a lot to this project. That's community members participating directly in this area. So in my area, for example, Dow's Lake, Glebe Annex, they've been part of that group. And I understand they're supposed to continue on moving forward. So I guess just to President Love, what is the plan for that community engagement group moving forward? Are they still going to be engaged in this process, upcoming meetings that they're going to be having?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, Councilman Menard, the consultation process, much like we started the first time around after the first iteration, we have groups ranging from Barry's Bay all the way to Cornwall, Hawkesbury, Nunavut, Gatineau, the Indigenous population, and the local community groups that are formed within the KEG. We will definitely be going back to consult with each and every one of those groups across the board. So in a similar fashion as we did the first time around.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks so much, and looking forward to working with you on this as it continues. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much, President Love, for presentation. Very exciting. I was wondering about, maybe I missed it, but where does the Queensway Carleton fit in terms of the hospital system, in terms of this whole project? Which is also, you know, in our West End.
Yeah, so the Queensway Carleton is a community hospital that deals with a lot of the primary, secondary type care for all the West End population. So we work, myself with Andrew Faulkner, we work very closely together around how we're supporting sort of the Western part of the population. As for that population that requires more complex care, such as the neuros, the vasculars, trauma, cardiac, all of that activity supports regionally, so it moves out of the West End. Part of the planning for our site, while it's not directly linked, correlates to the overall bed plan of what Andrew's site is planning in terms of where they need growth and capacity for the primary, secondary care that surrounds their hospital. So, and I think when you look at it, it'd be similar to the MOFOR in the East End, where we support the Civic and the Queensway support probably 95% or close to 100% of all the care in the West End. Same with MOFOR in the general in the East End. The difference is 100% of the complex care comes to the general and the Civic, cancer, neurovascular, et cetera. So we've got a plan. What we have at the Ottawa Hospital is linked to some extent to the bed plan and growth requirements for the East and West based on those distributions of activity. So it's all built into that. So Andrew has a plan in terms of he's expanded mental health. He's got some expansion around post-acute care capacity in the West End. They all get linked together in terms of one comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful for residents to know. I'm familiar with the Civic as somebody who was diagnosed with epilepsy 4 years ago. So I'm familiar with the neurology department. And they're excellent. So I'm here. But I really appreciate the fact that you've got to attract new recruits in terms of from all over the world. And I think it's actually a wonderful opportunity because I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of diversity and fantastic candidates coming in. And the other part is I was thinking about that presentation that we had on Friday about, you know, as we grow as a city, this is an opportunity to work with the city on wooing people here in terms of if you're having people from all over the world coming here, so I'm just wondering if that's part of the plan, because they'll need to see our city and fall in love with our city to want to be here. So is that part of the plan? And you're building a hospital, but you're also building an HR plan as well, I expect.
Yeah, so that is a great comment, Councillor Kavanaugh. And I think I'd answer that with sort of two streams of work around that. In partnership with the University of Ottawa, which is our medical school for the region, I think one of the streams that we are always trying to recruit from is the medical students that do their residency here, that work with the staff physicians and the teams. A big part of what we do as well is try and recruit the people that we've trained internal to allow for that growth of medical staff. Same thing with nurses and physios and OTs. So there's an element of creating a robust program and a medical education institute with the university to allow us to not only attract people to do their schooling, but to retain them when they're done their schooling so they don't go to BC or Calgary or Edmonton, et cetera. So that's one element to it. And then to the other element you've said is for programs where there are particular niches, particularly as it comes to research and we're recruiting across the globe. I can tell you first and foremost, people that are interested in relocating are looking at the program. But as we get an interest level, part of what happens with that process of recruitment is to bring them in and show them what the city has to offer. And so a lot of the times when these people are being recruited, they're also looking at maybe Mayo or Hamilton or UHN. And so part of this is not only what we have to offer in terms of the capacity for them to do research, but it's also when they're bringing their family, what does Ottawa have to offer? So that's very much built into the recruitment process after there's an interest level shown or when we're trying to recruit people. There's a whole process that surrounds that.
Yeah, thank you. And that Friday presentation that we had where we talked about promoting our city, this is very key. I think we have a very key connection here of building, having wonderful, fantastic, talented people coming in. So it's an opportunity. Thank you. One of the ways that a lot of people from my area is going to get there is, this isn't a question for you so much as Mr. Manconi, is the rapid transit bus line on Carling. I expect that will be up and running by then. It's going to be up and running soon. So that will be actually more of a primary way of getting there than the LRT, probably because of the fact that it's so direct. I live just off of Carling myself. So it's not just the LRT that's going to get people there. So, and hopefully that will be integrated in.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Anyone else have any other questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des autres questions, des commentaires pour Monsieur Love ou son équipe? Well, thank you again very much, Cameron and Catherine and Jason. You heard from my colleagues, many of my colleagues, their enthusiasm for the project and the excitement that this, along with phase 2 and 3 of LRT and our new library and all of our other city building projects, are going to be, I think, very well received and get the population very excited about our future as a city. So thank you. Merci. Notices of motion for consideration at subsequent meetings. Any inquiries, Madam Coordinator?
No, Mr. Chair.
Other business? Adjournment? Motion to adjourn? Carrie? End of day? All right. Thank you.